1921, we made a promise. In the lobby of a small old hotel in the prairies, we made a promise to founders and to farmers to build a community. To serve that community, to support our neighbors, and above all else, to educate generations to follow. It was not always easy. We outlasted the Great Depression, we trained for the Great War, we built a gymnasium and we watched it burn down and we built it again. Bigger and better we grew, all to keep that promise. High on the banks of the North Saskatchewan River, I'm pretty proud of where we stand. It's not just a university in Edmonton, but Concordia University of Edmonton. So here's to the last century, and here's to the next. A century of promise. In 1921, Concordia began as a Lutheran boarding school to educate the children of German settlers across Western Canada. To be a student here was to find yourself in a small hotel in downtown Edmonton, part of a class of just 35, paying a tuition of $130 a year. As young as 14 and as old as 22, students at Concordia studied classics, humanities, and sciences. Some of Edmonton's indelible landmarks were under construction when Concordia first opened its doors. The high-level bridge was little more than scaffolding starting to crawl across columns jutting from the river. But as the city changed, so too did the school. Quickly, Concordia began to expand. First, down the road to a former jam factory. But as the years passed, it became clear that even that wasn't a permanent solution. Concordia's journey can be measured in brick and stone, by the buildings that cement its place in this community. By 1925, enrollment had continued to grow, and it was becoming clear that Concordia needed a permanent home, a place to grow. It found that home, in a plot of Treaty 6 land high above the North Saskatchewan River. In July 1925, the cornerstone of what would become that home was laid, and in 1926, on a sunny winter's day, warmer than usual for that time of year, Concordia's campus was officially opened. The Concordia community continued to expand and grow over the years that followed. Until in the fall of 1929, a stock market crash announced the beginning of the Great Depression. The lofty aspirations of many of Concordia's students were put on pause as they needed to stay at home, work, and help their families endure the crisis. Enrollment dropped over 40% during the 1930s. Over the years that followed, Concordia adapted to meet the needs of a changing time and a growing city. In 1939, Concordia's high school program became fully accredited, and in 1941, female enrollment began to grow. Despite what was then a remote location, Concordia wasn't insulated from the history unfolding around it. As World War II began, 55 of Concordia's students and alumni were serving in the armed forces. Those who were exempt from service formed a commando-trained reserve unit known as the Concordia Platoon. The end of World War II brought a boom in enrollment. In 1947, more than 100 students enrolled, and it became clear that new facilities were again needed. The post-war period represented both physical and philosophical expansion. Concordia hired its first female teacher in 1948. A new women's dormitory was opened in 1956, alongside a series of new infrastructure projects on campus. A new gymnasium, complete with pipe organ, in 1953. Guild Hall, home to science labs, office space, and a library, in 1956. As Concordia's 50th anniversary began approaching, it was clear that for everything the school had endured, a new question was beginning to gnaw at the tight-knit community. The question of accreditation. In the fall of 1966, only 87 students enrolled, and it had become clear that more students wanted to embark on the path towards a university degree. In 1967, Concordia responded to this by seeking out first-year accreditation with the University of Alberta, the first steps of a journey that would take the school to full university status decades later. Enrollment began to flourish, and it was here that the Concordia community began to thrive. To be a student here in the 1970s was to witness a campus culture start to blossom. Sports, choir concerts, car rallies, banquets, and most importantly, friendships. In 1978, disaster struck. A fire tore through the gymnasium and auditorium, leaving only walls standing once the smoke had cleared. To be a student then was to take part in a rebuilding effort that marked the beginning of several decades of growth. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Concordia thrived. By 1987, Concordia began officially offering Bachelors of Arts and Science, and in the spring of 1988, 13 students walked the stage and received the first degrees issued by Concordia. As enrollment rushed past 1,000 students, an architectural master plan was laid out for expansion over the coming years. A roadmap we would follow as we split high school and university faculties, opened the Robert Tegler Student Center, and began connecting with other institutions all over the world digitally, with the rise of computers and the internet. In 1995, Concordia was accepted as a full member of the Association of Universities and Colleges of Canada and received government approval to change its name to Concordia University College of Alberta. But as we turned the corner on a new millennium, that name, Concordia University College of Alberta, sat at the heart of an identity crisis for Concordia. But 15 years into the new millennium, Concordia was finally recognized and received government approval to become Concordia University of Edmonton. A full university, a modern university, a university welcoming students from around the world to this city on the river. And so, over 100 years, Concordia had evolved. First from a prep school, then into a high school, into a college as the decades ticked on, and finally, into a university. Bringing us back to that name, Concordia University of Edmonton. A name we carry proudly as we've grown into a non-religious institution inviting students from around the world, dedicated to inclusivity and a commitment to Indigenous communities. Concordia University of Edmonton. We're the only major institution to put this city in our name. At first, a choice to distinguish ourselves from other institutions in Canada, it's both a promise to the future and a proud statement about our past. Concordia is of Edmonton. It grew up here, planted its roots when the city was in its infancy, and endured the same trials as the city did. Concordia's history is forever tangled with the story of this place on the river. As the promise of Edmonton grew, so too did the promise of Concordia, its community, and its students. And wherever the next 100 years takes us, we'll always be of this place, of this community, of this city. Concordia University of Edmonton.